Brave New World, a novel that predicted that someday the entire world would live under a frightful dictatorship. Mr. Huxley says that his fictional world of horror is probably just around the corner for all of us.
If you think about it, the dystopian world that Huxley tried to sketch so intricately in his book, Brave New World, and continued his idea in Brave New World Revisited and his final novel, Island, over the 1930s to the 1960s, we are living in the very post-apocalyptic wreckage of a world in the 21st century. Aldous Huxley presented a satiric, futuristic world where the common people are aware of their enslavement and yet so blatantly refuse to revolt against it. Here we must introduce the operant conditioning theory of B.F. Skinner. The work of Skinner was rooted in a view that classical conditioning was far too simplistic to be a complete explanation of complex human behavior. He believed that the best way to understand behavior is to look at the causes of an action and its consequences. He called this approach operant conditioning. He explained this through an experiment with a rat. When the rat responded in ways favorable to him, he gave it food, for the rat to see it as a symbol of reward. On the other hand, when it made behaviors which Skinner did not approve of, he inflicted pain upon the rat as a form of punishment. The same applies to humans. Take, for example, slavery. When the slave disobeys his master, the master punishes him to show what he is and is not allowed to do. While that solves the issue for the moment, it does not completely exterminate the possibility of the slave revolting in the future. Huxley, with a tone of sarcasm, presents a solution for this. In his book, he introduces a drug, soma, which is constantly being consumed by the citizens of world state to escape from reality. In this method, the ones in power prevent conflict by keeping the citizens addicted to pleasures, which, although destructive and manipulative, ensures that the people will not wish to get out of the chains binding them. Therein surfaces the question of whether we truly are free or living in a modernized version of concentration camps. None are more hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe they are free. Very rightly said Johann Wolfgang von Goethe nearly 200 years ago. And quite uncannily, it is more pertinent in the current times. It is commonly misunderstood that nothing has chained us up only because the West has not transformed into a purgatory of dystopia. But enslavement does not necessarily come with force. Totalitarianism is not always very conspicuous in its form, and so, to quote Huxley himself in his book, one believes things because one has been conditioned to believe them. Did you ever wonder whether drugs, pornography, social media, digital forums, technology in its entirety, is continually providing us with all the sorts of pleasures the human mind could ask for, to avert our attention from the very fact that man, although the inventor of all of it, has now fallen into the catch of his creation? Has the lust for power turned man against himself? Reality cannot be ignored except at a price, and the longer the ignorance is persisted in, the higher and more terrible becomes the price that must be paid. When Huxley initially published his depiction of a cutting-edge dystopian world in the form of his novel Brave New World, he did not perceive it as a forthcoming warning for humanity. But after the expansion of tyranny and dictatorship with the Second World War and the consequences that came with the progress of science, he formed an entirely different perspective and declared, "There will be in the next generation or so a pharmacological method of making people love their servitude and producing dictatorship without tears, so to speak, producing a kind, painless concentration camp for entire societies, so that people will in fact have their liberties taken away from them, but will rather enjoy it." The concept of thoughtless slaves was introduced by Huxley to put an apparent end to civil turbulence. But Skinner contradicted him with the idea of putting operant conditioning for the greater good of humanity. On the contrary, however, we are the living example of the darkness that has shadowed upon humanity by the grotesque reality of brainwashing in the name of a greater good. The consequence of a scientifically created utopia is a complete surrender to our basic human rights and our ability to think. The masses are now subjugated, but we fail to question the authorities and are blind to the fact that we, indeed, have willingly fallen prey to their oppression. The victim of mind manipulation does not know that he is a victim. To him, the walls of his prison are invisible, and he believes himself to be free, fittingly pointed out Huxley. This, therefore, is the dark side of pleasure. The curious thing is that in that case, the question of freedom never arises, says Skinner in Walden 2. In Huxley's book, the citizens were regularly and coherently drugged, determined by the dosage. Feelings of ecstasy, pleasurable hallucinations, sexual fulfillment were artificially prompted to continue feeding them propaganda and keep them so engrossed with false promises that they would not have time for any political unrest or a revolution. Now it is up to you, to put two and two together and realize the sinister resemblance his novel has with our reality. As Karl Marx said a long time ago, religion works as opium for the people. Huxley meticulously overturned the situation. The drug soma that was consumed by the citizens of his dystopian world was itself the religion of the people. Sexual immorality was also used as a skillful strategy to guarantee that the people would give in to their enslavement. The question presented to you thus is, can you deny the creepy similarities of Brave New World with the present time? If most of us remain ignorant of ourselves, it is because self-knowledge is painful and we prefer the pleasures of illusion. But liberties are not given, they are taken. So it is time for us to embrace the pain and open our eyes.